everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some fried fish sandwiches with some seasoned potato wedges and a broccoli salad. So let's start by getting our bacon fried up for our broccoli salad. We don't need a whole pound, so I'm just going to cut my bacon in half, and we'll save half of this for another day. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip up my bacon into bits, so I almost have like a bacon bits, and we're gonna fry them up, and they're gonna go in our broccoli salad, and it just gives you this really savory little bit of crunch that will be in there with some pumpkin seeds and dried cherries and cheddar cheese. It's just delicious. It's that like kind of classic broccoli salad that you have at picnics and whatnot. So again, just snipping this up, and then we'll let those kind of cook and crisp up. Lost my little bits here. Kitchen shears are the best for doing this. It works so much better than like cutting it up on a cutting board. And I had a little bit more in here. So we'll let these kind of fry up until they're nice and crispy. There we go. So let me throw this away. I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to prep our potato wedges to go into the oven. Okay, let me turn my back burner on. And we've got our water boiling because we're going to blanch our broccoli so it's like a tender crisp. So I've got 3 russet potatoes, and we're going to do potato wedges here. So I'm going to cut each one in half, and then we'll make our little wedges, and then we're going to season them up nicely. And then we'll put them on a baking sheet, and we're going to air fry them until they're nice and crispy and done. Okay. So I don't want to do them super thick because they'll take forever to cook up, and then you're more likely to burn them. But just nice little thin wedges here. I think that one's good. And I just feel like, fried fish sandwiches, a potato, like a French fry, just sounds like it just goes perfect. And then I was thinking about doing coleslaw, but I'm like, you know what? I did coleslaw already like once this week, so let's branch out. Do a little different. Do my broccoli salad, which is like kind of in the same family. Different veggie, but delicious. And I remember the first time I made it was actually in Iowa. My sister, it's kind of like a play on my sister's recipe that she has. And I remember I was there one summer helping her watch her kids, and we made it like every 3 days that summer. We were so in love with this broccoli salad. That and banana bars. They were just so good with cream cheese frosting. Okay. So I've got my potato wedges here, and now I'm going to place them in my bowl here. We're going to get some olive oil, some flour, onion powder, and Lowry seasoned salt. So let me grab my olive oil. And we want enough oil to kind of coat these, but they don't need to be glistening. So we're probably going to use about 2 tablespoons. Just going to drizzle a little over, enough to get them all wet, but to hold on that base. Turn that down a little, and we need a little bit of flour. It's going to help hold all of these spices and give you just a better finish on it, a nice crispy finish. You want about 1.5 tablespoons-ish. And now we'll do our seasonings. So we're going to use some Lowry seasoning salt, which is going to give it a really savory flavor. And we're going to want about, 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And then some onion powder, which will also give a bit of savory flavor to this. And we'll want about 1.5 teaspoons. And then we're going to go in here with our hands, and we're just going to mix everything around until we have it all coated with that oil, the flour, and those spices, so that every potato wedge is covered in that deliciousness. And it's going to be, I think it'll just be that nice little potato that you have with your kind of fry. Not quite a French fry, but close. I feel like you can do home fries in so many different variations and ways. I always just try to change it up just a little bit. Okay, let me grab a baking sheet out. We got one cut. Okay. And again, when I'm doing potatoes, I never put down parchment paper because I find it like kind of messes with the crispiness. But I'm going to try to sit these up so that they're just resting on their skin. And that way they can crisp up on both sides. And again, you don't want them touching. You want each potato to really have its own space so they get crispy, because if they touch each other, then where they touch won't get crispy. Now, sometimes you cut them and they won't quite stand up, but that's okay. There we go. And I will say 3 potatoes, they make a lot more potatoes than you think, like wedges. What is that? That's a big fatty. Okay, let's get these all set out. But you see how that flour just helps all of these seasonings and spices really cling well to the potato. So it's well seasoned up. Yeah. It's almost like domino effects here. About to knock them all down. Okay. Got them all out. I'm going to wash my hands. There we go. And of course, one fell down. Let's get it standing up. And then we're going to carefully walk this over to our oven. I have it heated up to 425 on the air fryer setting, so they'll crisp up nicely. And I'm going to put them in at 500. I'm actually going to put them down a level so they're not getting as much direct heat on the top, so they don't crisp up too fast, because you know how with the air fryer setting, a lot of times it likes to eat really crisp. So I'm going to set it for 15 minutes. And we'll check on it then, see if it needs any more time or not. Okay, let me give this bacon a little toss. There we go. Perfect. That way. And we can start making our dredge for our fried fish here. I'm gonna grab my onion powder in here. So we're gonna use 3 eggs, and we're gonna add in some panko breadcrumbs as well after it. But let me grab my flour, because that's kind of our base that we need here. And I'm gonna do, since we have 6 big fillets of tilapia, we're gonna have one of those like big fish sandwiches where that fish really pops over. I'm gonna use about 1.5 cups of flour. There we go. And then we're going to season up our flour. I'm going to use Old Bay, which is kind of got just like a lovely flavoring in it. And we're going to use about, I want a good like 1.5 tablespoons. We want a good amount in here. There's lots of good spices, and you really want it to show through on there. And then we're going to add in some onion powder. Again, nice savory flavor. About 1 tablespoon or so. And I'm going to grab a fork here. We're going to give it a good stir. And then we'll mix up our eggs. And I'm just doing kind of that classic breaded fish flavor with it. So just keeping it at that Old Bay. But really, you can add so many different spices in here. If you want a nice Cajun pop to it, you could add some little Cajun seasoning and some red pepper. You know, an Italian flair, add in some Italian spices. So you can really do a lot with it. There we go. Now let's crack our eggs. Got a shell. And we're going to do 3 eggs. And this is just, Eggs are cracking funny today. And then we're going to whisk these up. So I'm going to pop my yolks, and then we're just going to whisk them up until all of that egg white is kind of mixed into the yolk so that you don't have any stringy egg whites. Okay. And then let me stir this bacon over here real quick. Here we go. Because I want it to crisp up nicely, but I don't want it to burn. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dredge all of our fish, and then we'll add in our panko breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to get my panko ready to add in after we do it, so my hands can, I'll just have one hand ready to use.
Is the bacon on low heat?
Yeah, it's on, not quite low, it's on like a medium. So I want it to cook, you know, fairly fast, but it doesn't have to, I don't want to do it on high. So just about a medium heat here. We're going to take our tilapia fillets and we're just going to dip them in our dredge right now. We're going to cover them up. This is so when we do our egg wash, dip it in the egg, it will stick on nicely. So nice little coating, and that's why you want to have it seasoned well. This coating will definitely stay on your fish. Sometimes your top coating will fall off a little bit or whatnot. So you want all that flavor to hit the fish right away. There we go. And we'll get these all dredged up. And then we're going to add in some panko breadcrumbs to our mixture here so that when we dip it in, we'll have a nice big pop of, you know, of a crunch in it. And of course, I didn't even follow my own rules of using one hand. So I'm going to wash my hands here in just a second. I always say use one hand, and that way you've got a nice clean hand to keep with. But I changed. I stepped differently. Okay, let me wash my hands up real quick. And then we're going to give our bacon a quick stir. Here we go. And now we're going to put our panko breadcrumbs in here. You're going to add in about a cup or so we have a good crunch on it. And I'm just going to use it, and we're going to kind of mix that up, have all that base in there. You see now we've got kind of like a shaggy crunch. This is going to give us a much better, you know, fried fish. So we're going to go into the egg. We want to coat it on both sides, and that flour that are first dredging helps all of the eggs stick to it. And then we're going to kind of coat it up with our breading here. And I always like to give it a little pat down, helps it kind of stick on a little bit nicer. There we go. You see, when we put these in our bun, they're going to be a nice big fried fish. And we're doing a breaded instead of a battered one, which apparently my son Torin, he is like all for the breaded. He does not care for the battered. And I'm like, it's like almost the exact same thing, except you mix the ingredients and you batter it instead of breaded. So it's funny how it's just slightly different cooking process. And he doesn't like it as much. He goes, well, when you cut into it, all of the breading goes away on the battered ones. So in to this. There we go. And then over here. Now, I feel like back in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, shake and bake was a huge thing where you could coat it and then you shake your thing. The only problem with that is you only get a really thin coating of your like your batter on your stuff. And so you don't have a nice thick crunchy crust. So I prefer to do the hand breading, which does take a minute or two longer, but I think it gives you a much better end product. Here we go. So just about two more left. But you can see This is why I keep one hand clean, because you've got literally, you bred your fingers in this whole process. So we've got this all coated up, and then I just kind of sprinkle it on top to start that. And then we'll press it down, flip it over, kind of do the same thing and really coat it up. And then our last one, woohoo! And then we can check on our bacon there. We'll start heating up our oil to fry these. Now, the nice thing about fish is they take not very long, not a long time to cook up. You know, they cook through pretty fast, unlike, you know, chicken or pork or whatnot. So it's kind of nice because they don't need to cook quite as long before they get golden and crispy. Okay. Now we've got our battered mess here. I'm going to wash my hands, get all of this goop off of it. And then we'll stir our bacon and we'll start frying. And then we're going to work on our broccoli salad. We're going to not branch it. There we go. These are almost ready, which is nice. Just waiting until all of them are crispy, because that crunch is what you want in that salad, that savory little crunch. You could always use bacon bits or like those crumbles. You know how you can get those, but fresh is better. I'm going to turn it down a smidge to about a 3. Let's get our burner warming up here. Wrong one. I'm going to start my on high. And then once we're ready to drop that fish in, I'm going to turn it down to a medium, to about a 4 or 5. That way it doesn't burn my fish. And I just want a nice kind of thin coating on the bottom of my pan. You don't need to have them completely submerged. You just want enough to kind of crisp up around the edges about halfway through. I'm just going to, let me grab, I'll clean this up later. I'll just move that. And that way I can move this one over. And now, while oil is heating up, let's get our broccoli blanching. Now we're going to cook our broccoli in boiling water for about less than a minute, or around a minute. We want it to turn bright green, but we don't want it to get tender. We want it to still have a crunch. And this is essentially going to just take some of that bitterness out of it that fresh broccoli has, and also just make it easier to chew. And I feel like a lot of people, when they make broccoli salad, they just use raw broccoli for it. But if you just take the time to blanch it, it's going to be so much nicer. So I'm just going to kind of cut my broccoli up into the pieces that we want. There we go. For our broccoli salad. Let's cut this guy. We don't want any huge ones because you want to be able to eat it.
What's the best kind of oil to use?
You know what? I think oil comes down to personal preference, what flavors you like, and in that regard. I love olive oil because that's my preferred. I love the flavors, but if you don't like olive, you know what I mean? Some people swear by avocado oil or whatnot. I think it comes down to, you know, personal preference and budgets. Oil is expensive, so, you know, you want to buy what you can afford to, and you know what I mean? And, you know, there's also different things. If you have to cook something on really high heat, olive oil might not be the best because it has like a smoking point of around 400. So it just really depends. For me, I personally love olive oil. I love the flavor, and it's so versatile. I can make vinaigrettes with it. I can bake with it. I can cook with it. You know, I mean, it has a lot of, you know, variety to it, and not much like overpowering flavors. So I've got my nice crispy bacon.
You have a question? You going live tonight for dinner?
No, we are not going live tonight. We're having a game night with grandparents here. So we're probably going to order some food or whatnot. So not live tonight. Let's do our drop test. Of course, I should actually get a drop of water on my finger. I never put my food that's frying in until my water sizzles. That barely sizzled, so it needs to heat up just a little bit more, because if you do it too soon, you're gonna get like a soggy fried fish instead of a crispy one. Let's drop our broccoli in now that we've got this boil on. And again, this is just going to be a really quick boil on these. We're gonna blanch them up. So I'm going to, let me pop them under the water here. And this is just going to take away a little bit of that bitterness that raw vegetables have, make them a little bit more tender, but we're not cooking them to where they're soft at all. We still want a nice firm. So I'm going to grab my colander here. Because this is going to go quick. And now I can see that drip of water I put in there is sizzling. So we are ready to put our fish in. Again, I'll test it just to make sure. There we go. So we've got a little bit, you know what? I'm glad I tested it. I wanted a little bit hotter. So maybe about a minute longer on that oil and we'll get it to nice hot. But you see, once we drop this in, our broccoli now is so much brighter green in color. It's just going to taste so much better. And again, this is really fast. So we're already done with it. I'm going to put it in here. And then to prevent it from cooking more, you're going to run cold water over it. And it doesn't take, you don't need to do much, but this is just going to prevent it from getting more cooked, more mushy. I want it to stop cooking. Same thing if you're doing a pasta salad, you run cold water over the noodles to prevent them from cooking longer. Okay. Shake all that out. Here we go. Now I'm going to throw my broccoli in here, and that will be ready for our broccoli salad. And it will just be a little bit softer. Now my oil should be nice and hot. So let's put our first fillets in, and then we will check on our potato wedges and see if they need any more time. Here we go. I'm going to try to get 3 fillets in at a time so I can just do 2 batches. But I will say that's the tricky part of having a big family is can only fit so much in a pan at a time. And I want to make sure I'm going to actually rotate it. Here we go. Perfect. Let's go check on those potato wedges and we'll see how they are looking. They might need a little bit more, but with air fryers, you just never know. Sometimes they decide they want to crisp up really fast. So I'm going to say these need still about 5 more minutes. I want a little bit more golden brown on them. So just a little bit longer on here. So we'll set that up, which will be perfect because then we'll have, I think, our first round of fish ready and the rest of our stuff done. So let's get on to making our tartar sauce and our broccoli salad. I'm getting a little bowl here for our tartar sauce. And we'll get one here for the base for our broccoli salad. Okay. So we're going to use, I have a red onion. This is going to go both in our tartar sauce and our broccoli salad. And I will say we don't need a whole lot. Let me cut off the middle here because we're not going to use that part. And then we're going to peel off this one. So I think this should work. I will say red onions, I love red onions, but you know, they're best used when in raw things like dips, sausage, or on a burger or whatnot. So I don't use red often, and I feel like one red onion will last me forever. So this is going to go into our tartar sauce. Move some of these broccoli bits out of the way. So I'm going to mince it up a little bit smaller because I want it to be a bit finer in the tartar sauce, but it's going to add that nice oniony flavor. This is going to be probably about 2 tablespoons of minced up red onion. And then for our salad, I'm going to do just a slightly bigger cut on it. It doesn't have to be quite as small. And we're going to put it in our broccoli salad. And again, that will also give us that mild onion flavor to it. Let's grab our bowl over here with our broccoli in it. And throw that on there. Perfect. And our bacon bits, they have cooled down, so they can go into our broccoli salad as well. So we've got in there. And I'm going to prep my pickle now for my tartar sauce. So I'm actually, since looks like Evie has picked over my pickles well, she loves pickles. I'm going to use 2 pickles here. 2 thin slices. You don't need a whole lot, but you want like 1 big spear, or I guess 2 little ones. And then you're just going to mince it up into nice fine little bits. But this is going to go into the tartar sauce. And that red onion and those pickles give you that crunch and that tanginess, that zesty flavor to it. And as well as some lemon juice. And it just makes it so much nicer. Here we go. So we've got our pickle going in here. Beautiful. Now, let's make the rest of our tartar sauce, which once you've made your own tartar sauce, you're never going to go back. It's so easy, but it's delicious. We're going to put in about 1/2 cup of mayo in here. There we go. We'll use the rest for that, but let me check. I'm just going to rotate my pan here. Get that nice side. I'm looking for my edges to get kind of golden brown, and that's when I know they'll be ready. We're going to use some fresh lemon juice. We need about 1/3 of a lemon. We've got our fresh lemon juice. Beautiful. And then you're going to use, you can either use fresh or dried dill. And you're going to want about 1/2 teaspoon of dried dill or a teaspoon of fresh dill. So I'm just going to shake it in because a little bit of dill goes a long way. And then let me grab my garlic salt over here. And then just a smidge, little shake of garlic salt. You don't need to add a lot because mayo already has a bit of natural saltiness to it. And then a pinch of pepper. And all we have to do is mix it up, and voila, you have homemade tartar sauce that is way better than anything you buy at the store. Super simple, easy, delicious. When you're doing fried fish, you just have to have tartar sauce. Now let me check my fish here. I'm going to see if they're ready to flip. This first one is perfect. We've got a nice kind of golden fry on it. So again, I'm going to flip it over. Let's see how this one's looking. Perfect. There we go. Look at that beautiful golden fried fish. You get that nice kind of reddish golden color because in Old Bay, there's a little bit of paprika in it. So it gives you that nice color. Okay. Got here. Now let's finish. Let's make the sauce for this, and we'll finish putting the rest of the ingredients in it for our broccoli salad. Oh, let's go grab our potato wedges before we do that. Looks like everything's coming together just about perfectly. I like to use a kosher dill pickle, like a zesty pickle, because I'm not a big sweet pickle person and I want salty flavors. There we go, much better. These have this beautiful golden brown crispy edges on them, which will make them perfect. Here we go. So we've got these delicious potato wedges, and I love to dip these in tartar sauce too. So let me put these all the way up here because they're nice and hot. And move that to there. But those, we kind of coated them in olive oil with flour and Lowry seasoned salt. And then and olive oil, and we spread them out and roasted them on the air fryer for about 20 minutes. And they're perfect. They'll be tender inside, but they'll have that crisp on the outside. Okay, let's make our sauce for our broccoli salad, and then we'll add our remaining ingredients in. I'm going to start with about a half a cup of mayo. Now, mayo, got to use full fat. It just tastes better. And make sure your mayonnaise is fresh, like you bought it recently. I have found that mayo like picks up the flavors in the scents in your refrigerator, so it gets a funky taste, even if it's not expired. So always make sure it's pretty fresh. Okay, we've got our mayo here. We're gonna add in about a capful or a teaspoon of vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar because I like that kind of sweetness to this. And we got my sugar. I don't make it super sweet, but you've got to have a little bit of sugar in the broccoli salad, kind of like a coleslaw. And so I'm not a super sweet one, but we're going to put in about a tablespoon of sugar. And that you just kind of need that little sweetness to cut down on the acidity of that vinegar, that take that like extra tang out, but it has that nice flavor to it. And then I'm going to just try it and see if it's just all right. Perfect. I make mine a lot less sweet than most like classic recipes because I'm just not a fan of overly sweet. So I'm using pumpkin seeds, but another common variations use sunflower seeds or chopped up like pecans or walnuts. I'm going to put in about 1/4 of a cup, which is kind of like a small handful. We're going to use shredded cheddar cheese. And again, it's about a half a cup of shredded cheddar cheese, so just a small handful into the bag. And then this is a variation too. I'm using dried cherries, but you can also use cranberries or raisins, depending on what you like. So it's always a fun one that you can kind of change up. And again, about 1/4 of a cup or so. Actually, I'm just going to use the last 3 of those. And now we have all of the bases for our salad. And I'm just going to give it a little toss first, and then we're going to pour our dressing on, and we'll mix it up. And this is one of those, just like coleslaw or potato salad, the longer it sits in its dressing, the more flavor it picks up. So we're going to toss it in there and kind of coat it up with that dressing. And this is just a delicious broccoli salad. A lot of times you find these at picnics or whatnot, but there's just a couple things you have to do to make it just a little bit better. You've got to blanch your broccoli to make it a little bit more tender and less bitter. And then got to use full fat mayo. But then you can pick your little fixings in there and change them up how you want them. Let's get the last little scoop in here. There we go. Beautiful. So we've got our broccoli salad, our tartar sauce, potato wedges. I think our first round of fish are ready to come out. And then I will actually start prepping our plate up, or how we're going to serve it, while our other ones are frying. So normally I always put them on paper towels, but again, I said I'm down to my bottom of my paper towels. Beautiful golden fry. You're going to want to put your greasy side down because you want it to drip below and crisp up. Your top has already had lots of time for it to drip below and crisp up. That one needs a little bit more. Here we go. There. Beautiful. And again, I'm just frying these on a 5. So a 5 out of 10. So like the exact medium. I heated up my oil, but once it was nice and hot, then I turned it down because you want a golden fry and you want it to cook the fish all the way through. So you don't want to have it too high and then you burn your fish or your breading. Here we go. I'll put these last ones in so they can fry up. And then we can plate up lunch. Put these, I'll just slide that over there. So they're cooking in their oil. And again, it doesn't take long for them to cook, but instead of making you guys wait through another round, let's plate up our lunch. So let me get a bun. I have to get my bun. My toddler, Mr. Jack, opened these up, stole half of a bun because I have my bread drawer underneath my oven over there, and he's a little thief. He'll just steal anything out of that drawer. Okay, let's grab brioche buns, any type of bun you want. I'm just using some butter buns here. There we go. So we'll start with our bun. Let me grab my fish over here. So I told you these are going to be pretty epic fish sandwiches. So we've got our fried tilapia that we breaded and used some Old Bay seasoning to really flavor it up. And then got to put a dollop of our homemade tartar sauce right over the top of it. And look, you finish it off with your bun, and just look how massive that fish fillet is, but it's going to be delicious. And we're going to serve it up with our homemade fresh broccoli salad that is chock full of bacon, cheese, red onions, pumpkin seeds, and just has that nice crunch and a kind of a slightly sweet mayonnaise dressing. And then, of course, we'll finish it off with some crispy potato wedges that we seasoned up with Lowry seasoned salt. So they'll have that nice savory crunch and then have a little bit of a flour coating on them to give that nice, delicious crust. But again, a delicious, easy, homemade lunch for our family today. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day to try to show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, all you have to do is go to that link, search for what we cooked for, so fried fish sandwiches and broccoli salad, and then you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of the different cooking gear and gadgets we use in the kitchen. So I have my Hexclad pans, I've got my Wusthof knives, my cutting boards, all the different gadgets you see me using in my kitchen I have in my Amazon storefront for you guys to check out if you're interested. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.